Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss conclusions I've drawn from studying American history, reading trusted historians, trying to research their primary sources that they list. And you may not agree with my conclusions or any of my conclusions, but you should know about the subjects, events, people, and places I discuss, and even more to be conversant in American history. So it's complex and rich, and it's very important that you get a handle on it. We're talking about the American Revolution. Um, the Second Continental Congress met on May 10th, 1775, in Philadelphia. After the death of Peyton Randolph, its president was John Hancock. Those distinguished patriots assembled included cousins John Adams and Samuel Adams, called the quote brace of Adamses in a reference to a set of dueling pistols, Silas Deane and Roger Sherman of Connecticut, John Jay, William Schuyler, Philip Livingston, Robert Livingston, and William Livingston from New York and New Jersey, Caesar Rodney, Thomas McKean, and Thomas Reed from Delaware, Samuel Chase and Thomas Johnson Jr. from Maryland, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Richard Henry Lee, Francis Lightfoot Lee, and George Wythe from Virginia, Christopher Gadsden, Henry Middleton, eventually replaced by his son Arthur, and John and Edward Rutledge from South Carolina, Joseph Hughes and William Hooper from North Carolina, Lyman Hall and Archibald Bullock from Georgia, and from Pennsylvania were John Dickinson, Joseph Galloway, Robert Morris, James Wilson, and Benjamin Franklin. They created a provincial army and navy and sent diplomatic agents to Europe. They assumed sovereign powers over Indian relations, with Lewis Morris and James Wilson holding a council in September of 1775 with Blue Jacket, White Eyes, and Cornstalk of the Shawnee, the Delaware, and the Seneca Indians at Fort Pitt. The Delaware Indians, then living in southern Ohio, were the recipients in 1778 of the first treaty with an Indian nation concluded by Congress. The Iroquois Confederacy chose to remain faithful to the king. The members of Congress disagreed on many fundamental subjects and were united only in their opposition to the unconstitutional acts of Parliament, but few would utter the word independence, and many were still loyal to the king. Only the Lees, Adamses, Gadsden, and Franklin believed independence to be the only solution. After making Washington commander in chief of the militia, besieging Boston, and sending Benedict Arnold up through Maine to bring Canada in as the 14th colony, Dickinson and Jefferson wrote up a declaration on the causes of taking up arms, which denied any desire to break the bonds with England. They blamed Lord North for deceiving the king and hoped that a show of firm resolve on the part of the Americans would convince Parliament that its course of action was foolish. It was a hard thing to decide for these learned men due to the fact that American culture was inextricably tied to Great Britain through all of its history, and secondly, that the Bible did not excuse rebellion. See 1 Peter 2:13. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme. And goes on. Or 1 Peter 2:17. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. Or 1 Samuel 15:23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as the sin of iniquity, and idolatry. As a matter of fact, the Bible had a tremendous impact on the minds of the people of that time in a way we can't understand in this day, when George Whitfield's insistence that we read the Bible to the exclusion of all other books and means of entertainment goes ignored. The King James Bible was called the quote common version, and Congress made a recommendation in 1777 for 20,000 copies to be imported from Holland, Scotland, or elsewhere to different parts of the Union. They had been imported from England in the early days of American colonies by the crate load. In 1762 and 1769, this all important book, which was often the only book in a common person's home, had its spelling standardized in a way we recognize today. This Bible was how people were taught to read and to study. Families read the Bible to each other, and in many rural places with no television, radio, MP3 player, or so much as a magazine or a newspaper, the Bible was the one sure thing. The first naval action of the war apart from the Gaspee incident, occurred on June 12, 1775, when a party of lumbermen led by Jeremiah O'Brien captured the British armed cutter Margaretta at Machias Bay, Maine. As Washington departed Philadelphia, he met headlong news of the Battle of Bunker Hill, where in a battle that really took place on the lower elevation of Breed's Hill, a reinforced General Gage drove off William Prescott's 1,200 men while losing half of his troops in the bloody attack from which we get the phrase for close quarters combat, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes. While Harper's military history regards this as only a tactical victory for the British, but a psychological victory for the Americans who felt they only lost because they ran out of ammunition, W.J. Wood's Battles of the Revolutionary War states that at the time the battle was viewed in America as a battle that didn't have to be fought and was a mistake. Peter Salem, a free black, was given credit for shooting Major Pitcairn of the British in battle. So we're going to discuss George Washington. Start with George Washington's assumption of command of the Continental Army on the Cambridge Commons next. So I look forward to talking to you again. I hope that this will spur you to study on your own, come to your own conclusions. Thank you for watching.